Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Welcome to the wonderfully weird world of UFO, aliens, and weird stuff. And, of course, my UFO hotspot, where we record sightings and stick them on the map of weirdness. Right, and today we are talking about the Falkirk area. Obviously, we've spoke about it before, right? So, but before we go any further, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you can, right? Likes are really important and they help my content get noticed, apparently. So please like and subscribe. Okay, that would be fantastic. So today we're going to talk about the Fife incident, right? And the Fife incident is there. Okay, slightly above the Falkirk Triangle on the Highlands, right? Now, Fife in Scotland is just above the Falkirk Triangle. Not far from the Calvine photo, where the famous Calvine photo was taken. All right, and if you haven't seen that, check it out. Not far from the Dirchmont Woods incident. What is that one? Look, so that's the Dirchmont Woods incident. That's up there, okay? So the Fife incident, the Dirchmont Woods incident, right? Okay, a man gets attacked by strange ball-like things that emerge from a UFO. And if you haven't followed my YouTube channel, please do so, and you can check the story out because it's there. And it's not far from the A70 abduction. All right, that is there. The A70 abduction, obviously, Fife, Dirchmont, the A70 abduction. Just there is the Grangemouth electric photo, UFO photo. So we have got a pattern forming, haven't we? Okay, so not far from the A70 abduction, two men lost at least an hour of time on the lonely A70 on the way to Edinburgh. Again, check out the video if you haven't seen it. It is out there. So the Fife incident, right, and it happened in September 1996 on the way to the shops. Now, while making an impromptu visit to the shops one evening in September 1996, and before I go any further, I'll get all my information, well, most of my information, from a website called UFO Insight, all right, and this is where I got this story from. Check it out. It's well worth it. All right, you pay a little bit of subscription each year. I've been a member for years. It's a really good website. Check it out. So I've got this story from that. Okay, so while making an impromptu visit to the shops one evening in September 1996, her mother, her son and her friend would find themselves in the middle of an incident so bizarre, so bizarre, it's legend, and it still lives on today. Not only did the bemused and frightened trio witness a strange craft overhead, but also what they claimed were figures conducting unknown activities on the ground. A fantastic story, right? Now, Scotland, as we have examined previously, has a huge UFO count for a country of its size. Many believe, for example, that the Falkirk Triangle is home to some kind of portal or alien base. Such are the regularity of the sightings in that region. Many other reports of UFO occur throughout the country, much like the episode in Fife in the autumn of 1996, right? So if you look, Fife, Dirchmont, Falkirk, all right, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Stirling, right there is an open sea channel, right? I reckon there's an alien base there, personally. That's my theory on it, all right? But I could be wrong, right? Now, all those involved would choose to use pseudonyms. Pseudonyms. I can never pronounce stuff, could I? All of these involved would choose to use pseudonyms for the purpose of the report. They wanted to keep their real names out of it. We will use the same names here. Tony Dodd, one of the UK's leading UFO researchers and investigators at the time, will be the first one to examine the incident. Now, Tony Dodd, we have spoke about before, and I'll put his picture there, right? Tony Dodd, we have mentioned him a few times. He is a well-known investigator. Like you say, it is from his investigation that the encounter is so widely known. And to be fair, I'd never heard of it until I started doing this UFO hotspot map, so it's great, right? Now, at a little after 8 p.m. on the 23rd of September 1996, Mary Morrison realised she's run out of coffee. We've all been there, haven't we, right? Along with her friend Jane, they bundled Mary's 10-year-old son Peter into their car and set out on their journey. Right? Now, Mary's country farmhouse, it is still open at the time, right? So they think, right, we're going to go get some coffee. We've run out. We've all done it, haven't we? Right? So they weren't long on their journey when they noticed a huge white light hanging motionless in the sky. Now, much larger than a planet or a star, obviously, they believed it was a helicopter performing a search of the area. And look, we have all seen helicopters doing searches, haven't we, right? All over the air. We've all seen it. Now, then, as they all watched amazed, the object split into two. Now, Mary brought the car to an immediate stop. So, they all left the vehicle and stepped out to the roadside. The entire area was now lightly brit up, right? Lightly brit up. No, that's lightly brightly lit up. Thank you, right? Now, above them, they could clearly see a black triangular-shaped craft moving silently overhead. A black triangular craft. Several red lights appeared to be on the underside of this craft. Now, a black triangular shape, right? Now, that is very, very, very much the same as the Belgian wave, isn't it? Right, and we've also mentioned the Brett Forrest incident, right? You can't see it, I'll put it there. The Brett Forrest incident. He saw something as well, and he saw that in 1997. So a year after this incident. See, the map we're starting to get patterns, aren't we? Right now, it eventually moved out of sight, and the area returned to its normal feeling of, well, sleepy serenity, right? Not quite knowing what to make of the encounter, they returned to the car and continued to the shops. So they made their required purchase, a cup of coffee or a jar of coffee. Now, a little calmer, prepared to drive back to Mary's home. The journey, however, would be even more bizarre, right? As Mary negotiated the quiet country roads on their way back from the shop, the strange object suddenly appeared again. Only this time, it didn't remain high overhead. Instead, it rushed towards the car, stopping only several feet away. Now, it was so close, Peter became so unnerved, he began to cry a little. Now, remember, Peter's a kid, right? I mean, I would cry a little, and I'm an adult, right? Now, whether coincidentally or not, as soon as he did so, as soon as he started crying, the object would retreat and rise high overhead once more. As before, they continued their journey and arrived home shortly afterwards. So, do you think that the craft sensed Peter's anxiety? Do you think that's possible? Peter started crying, so they backed off a little bit. I would like to think so, right? I would like to think so. Now, once there, however, once they got home, and after telling Jane's daughter, Susan, about the incident, the intrigue in Mary and Jane was too much, right? They decided to return to the spot of the sighting. Now, I think I would do the same, right? This time with Jane with them, the daughter. Now, before they did, however, they would report the incident. At the time, many UK telephone operators would give out a standard phone number to the public to use for UFO sightings. And that number was often manned by UFO author Tony Dodd. Now, although Dodd himself wasn't at the phone station that evening, a close colleague was. Now, Tony Dodd, he is responsible for, the Yorkshire Dale sightings, wasn't he? Where, yeah, it was. I'll stick his photo there. And he used to be a policeman as well, what's really important. Now, while the two families did return to the spot on the road where they had witnessed the object, they didn't possess a camera. What's a shame, for which to take photographs as requested by the UFO hotline operator, right? Now, although they couldn't obtain any visual proof, the report they would give following the upcoming experience is a little bit mind-blowing. In fact, I would say it's more than mind-blowing, it's a fantastic story. Right, now, by the time they were on their way to the usual quiet road, it was approaching 9:45 at night, 9:45. Now, Mary brought the car to a stop when they noticed a bright blue glow just above the trees at the far end of the field at the roadside. Now, as they continued to watch, they noticed coloured beams of light that would shoot red, green and blue laser-like sparks in the air. Now, it was as they watched this fascinating performance that they each become aware, now this is where it gets interesting, of the silhouette of several thin figures moving about on the ground. Now, these figures were all the same size, around 3 foot high, and were obviously, this is what they're saying, obviously not human. Now, one of them stood out from the rest due to its height. Now, it was around a foot higher than the rest, and it seemed these strange creatures were picking up boxes of cubes from the ground. Right, that's what they're saying, boxes of cubes. Now, the witnesses could only make out cylindrical objects. As a backdrop to this activity stood a black shape on the ground. Now, the figures appeared to be going back and forth to this object, which appeared to be a ship. Fantastic, right? The more they stared at it, they could clearly see more of the details of the black figures emerging. Just above this activity, they could see hundreds of small star-like things in the air, and they said they were simply hanging there. Now, out of nowhere, a bright light appeared from above, lighting up the whole area where they were watching the events unfold. Now, it's at this time that Mary began to go into some sort of panic. She suddenly put the car into reverse, driving backwards at speed until an opening gave her the opportunity to turn the vehicle around. And I get that, dude. I totally get that, because I would do the same. In fact, I probably wouldn't have hung around that long. Right? So as Jane's house was nearer to their location, Mary would take them there. Right, and they're still freaked out, and you would be freaked out, wouldn't you, right? Now, they would tell Jane's rather bemused husband of the encounter. Now, although he himself was about to go to work, he offered his wife the use of his binoculars, should they wish to return to get a closer look. Now, some sources state that the Jane's brother was at their home, and it was his binoculars he had. Either way, right, the two women and two children returned to the spot a little while later, intent on finding out what was happening. Right, and I'll tell you what, right, even though I would be scared to death, and I think I would return too, wouldn't it? Right? Now, the scene appeared largely unchanged upon their arrival. The silhouettes were still moving around busily, and the blue glow was still very much visible behind them. Now, they would each use the binoculars to get a closer look from the safety of the wall at the edge of the field. Right? Now, the aforementioned Dodd, we know him, Tony Dodd, would send one of his investigators to interview the witnesses shortly after. They would tell him that the source of the light was a large, transparent, illuminated capsule type thing. It seemed to have indentations on the outside of it like a brain. Right, that's their description. Right, a smaller, brightly lit capsule sat alongside the larger one. Inside or near was the figure who stood a foot taller than the rest. It appeared this figure directed events. Right, so this taller figure sounds like he was the boss. So, the large craft that the figure was coming out and going from was a little way in the distance. Lots of different coloured lights adorned the exterior of this craft. Now, perhaps even visible light from the interior, there was also several groups of figures who were engaged in various activities. Some of them would venture into the woods carrying objects with them. They would place these on the ground and then pick something else up before returning to the craft. So it sounds like they're on some sort of scientific expedition. I don't know, maybe they're picking up plants, that sort of thing. Now, Jane would recall that as they watched these events unfold, cocoon-shaped capsules emerged in a blue mist from the woodland. Now, they moved on their own accord. She says similar to modern drones. One of them suddenly zoomed across the field to where they stood. As it was much larger close up, they said, it was made up of small capsules, each containing one of the dark figures. Jane recalled that there were dozens of them inside, so she began to scream. right? So this capsule has zoomed up upon them, and there's loads of pilots in there. There's loads of these alien things, right? We'll call them alien things. Now, suddenly, things become vague. There was lots of shouting and cries of panic, right? Jane remembered shouting that they should get out of there. The next thing they knew, they were in the car and pulling up at the driveway of Jane's home. Now, nobody, and I mean nobody, would sleep for the entirety of the night. You'd be either too excited, too stressed out, or too freaked out, wouldn't you? All three, basically, right? Now, over the course of the next day, all apart from Peter, had strange bruises or discolorations in various places. Jane, for example, found one on the upper right leg and another under her right breast. Susan would discover a similar mark on her right shoulder. And so, as time progressed, memories of the evening began to return to them, right? While all could remember previously locked away events, Jane would recall the most detail, all right? So, although she couldn't recall how, Jane knew she was taken on board the craft. It was extremely bright inside, and Jane believed she was paralysed somehow, and that's quite common, isn't it, right? The figures were around her, busily performing various procedures on her. Now, she didn't recall any pain, and she says, nor any malice in their intentions. All right, she would even state, I don't think they enjoyed what they were doing. It was just work. And I've heard that before as well, right, from an abductee, right, that they say, you know, we don't want to hurt you, but we just got to do it, man, you know. Don't get stressed out. But you would, wouldn't you, right? Now, whatever samples they were taken, they would hand them to a taller figure who stood in the background. She would recall hearing them communicate, but not out loud. And this is quite common as well. She said it was inside her head. This communication was high-pitched, like wails. Following the witnesses arriving home that evening, although they didn't recall it until later, Jane would ask Mary if she had seen her go on board the craft, to which Mary replied that she had. Now, ultimately, Mary would later recall these events in full, as would Susan and Peter. Now, Dodd's investigators would also examine the area where the incident took place. There were several burn marks on the ground, as well as several semicircular impressions. Now, even stranger, all right, though the area was throughout the area was a white spider web material distributed as if the result of a blast. So, you know, we've discussed this before, right? So even stranger, throughout the area was a white spider web material distributed as if the result of a blast. Now, we have discussed this before. It's called angel hair, and not common, but it's well known as of an after product of some UFO sightings. And I'll stick it there again, right? Angel hair. It looks a bit spider webby, and it doesn't last. It just disappears. Now, Dodd would state that although the area was completely inaccessible from the road, it had the appearance that a heavy vehicle had been on the land, and that's important, right? So it's inaccessible for any vehicle, right? But something had landed there. It didn't travel there. It didn't drive there. It wasn't towed there. Whatever made the indentation had landed there. Now, around a month after the incident, around a month after the incident, on 20th of October, a friend who had a son the same age as Peter would come to visit Mary. As the two women chatted and caught up, the two young boys played quietly in Peter's bedroom. And this gets a bit freaky, right? Now, for reasons he couldn't explain, Peter suddenly felt an urge to look out of his bedroom window. When he did so, now this is the freaky thing, right? A white figure with a lot of jagged teeth was looking back at him. Now, his friend, this is important, also witnessed this strange creature. It was floating in the air, and after a moment longer, it would float upwards and out of sight.